MMA Now, powered by Film On TV Network.
I'm David Cannon with MMA Now TV, and right now we're joined with a new member of MMA Now, Katie Klosky. Katie, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you aboard. What are some things or some sports you excelled at growing up?
I played a little bit of everything, tennis, softball, soccer, but tennis was definitely my favorite.
I've broken a few rackets of playing tennis.
Pulling a little Serena Williams?
I heard she won Wimbledon. And
She did.
So she did win
Yes.
Wimbledon. But they made more out of the Jay-Z and Beyonce being there than anything else, I think.
Yeah, because Beyonce looked a little confused, I guess, for when Serena won. That's what TMZ was saying.
We were at UFC 200, like fight week was huge, so all I knew was the Wimbledon was Serena. So congratulations to Serena Williams for that, but UFC.
Big news in the UFC world today, $4 billion
$4
sold.
billion. What does that buy you?
I think it can buy you the UFC.
It buys you the UFC. It's official. William Morris Endeavor Group. They purchased UFC for $4 billion. Originally, we reported for 4.2 a few weeks back. And I was actually told this, but I didn't report it last year by Sam Spiro, Randy Couture's manager, that they were going to sell after they got New York. And he actually thought they were going to get New York last year. It took a little bit longer. They got New York this year. And with the rise of Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey, it is worth $4 billion, I guess. And on the entertainment side, I think the value of the fighters becoming not just stars within their own rights in MMA, but they're starting to cross over mainstream.
Oh, yeah, it's totally crossing over into entertainment. The whole weekend, TMZ was reporting UFC news. So I definitely think it's going to be crossing over into the mainstream media, not just sports.
From your reporting in the past, as far as TMZ, a year ago, big fighters wouldn't have even made the main page of TMZ.
No, it was your standard football, maybe basketball, but not UFC.
Do you think this has something to do with the more of the commercials they're in, or some of them becoming crossovers into movies like GSP and Captain America?
Yeah, and especially with the rise of Ronda Rousey and everyone like that, it's definitely crossing over into mainstream. So I definitely think you will be seeing that more in regular news.
The UFC actually wrote a letter to the fighters stating that the sale was going to is happening and it is done. Fighters replied on Twitter. There was some mixed sentiment among them. A lot of them thanked the UFC. Conor McGregor thanked the Fertittas and said that he was honored to fight for them. Other fighters said, hey, maybe now we can get some better pay. Maybe it can be a sliding scale, more 50-50. And so it'll be interesting to see the schematics and if anything changes on that side.
Other big UFC news this weekend, Jon Jones testing positive for PEDs.
That was ginormous. I can't even state how shocked the world was that Jon Jones did test positive. In the past, he tested positive for cocaine, and which is not a violation outside of the competition, but to test positive for PEDs is a whole different level. Now it puts his legacy at stake. Was he on something when he fought DC the first time? Was he? It's so many things, and it affected the UFC 200 fight card ginormously.
And you were at UFC 200 this weekend. What was it like there?
We were at UFC 200 for the fight week. It was crazy. I mean, it was the only thing bigger from the weigh-ins that I've seen was Floyd Mayweather fights against Pacquiao was enormous weigh-ins, and Mayweather versus Maidana. But as out for MMA, hands down, this was the biggest weigh-in in MMA history. And as far as even the weigh-ins the day before for Claudia Gadelha and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the crowds came out in masses, and they were really there. Obviously, they had the Fan Expo and multiple things, but the fans were there in force.
There was the new arena.
Brand new T-Mobile Arena. It was nice. I mean, I think that's the first time outside of maybe a baseball stadium I've been to a brand new arena. The only combat sport that was before UFC 200 was Canelo versus Amir Khan, and even then it paled in comparison to UFC 200.
And what was the best fight you saw this weekend?
The best fight over the week was, hands down, was Friday night, Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Claudia Gadelha. It was a UFC strawweight title, and among fans on Twitter, they thought this was the the big fight. They thought this was the best fight as well. This fight could have been the main event at UFC 200. So it was interesting to see that. I mean, they weren't going to switch this fight around, but Joanna and Claudia, I mean, girls. I tweeted this. A lot of them are more vicious than the guys in a fight.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know what that's from. What's in the girls' DNA that's like, I'm going to scratch your eyes out, even though they can't do that. But they went at it, and not just go at it, but from a technical aspect, these are two of the best strawweight. They are the two best strawweights in the world, but probably the best pound for pound in the world as well.
Let's talk about Brock Lesnar. His upset. He hasn't had a fight in 5 years, and he comes in and wins it.
Yeah, I mean, that was crazy too. I mean, I picked Mark Hunt for the walk-off knockout, and it didn't happen. Instead, Brock Lesnar came in, took him down the first round. Second round, Mark Hunt was able to stuff his takedowns and got off, never was able to get off a good shot. And now Brock Lesnar is back in the mix. It's crazy. Brock Lesnar, after 5 years, has won a fight in the UFC.
And Lesnar has his WWE match next August coming up. What do you think after the match, SummerSlam? Is he going to come back?
Will he be back to the UFC? I think so. I mean, if he had lost and got knocked out, I don't think he would have came back. I think he wanted to test himself.
I mean, you come back in 5 years, you win. I'd come back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was what he wanted to do. He wanted to test himself, and he did test himself against one of the best heavyweights in the world, in Mark Hunt. And he did have a shiner, but other than that, I don't think he was hurt or he was in trouble. And he really dominated Mark Hunt in a fight that he might have been able to get a stoppage if that wasn't Mark Hunt. He said, he has a big old coconut head, so Mark Hunt's hard to take out. But had that been anyone else with those big blows, he has 4XL mitts for hands, that would have been game over for most.
Yeah, it was definitely an exciting weekend in Vegas for UFC.
It was the biggest. I mean, they had their obviously International Fight Week once a year, but for 200 to coincide with Fight Week in July, it's kind of crazy.